Rain drifted over Portland in a steady, silver curtain, soft enough to blur the streetlights but cold enough to seep through clothing and bone. It was barely 7 in the morning, and the city still felt half asleep. Storefronts closed, buses half empty, the sidewalks slick with early dew. Hannah Whitmore stood in front of the Women's Health Clinic on Northwest Lovejoy Street, her coat pulled tight around her, shoulders trembling from something far deeper than cold. She hadn't slept. Not really. The previous night had been one long stretch of staring at the ceiling, replaying every word from the courtroom, every look exchanged between her husband's attorney and Judge Leonard Briggs. Every moment her old lawyer shrank instead of standing up for her. Now outside the clinic, she looked like someone hollowed out by decisions she never wanted to face. Eyes swollen from crying, breath unsteady, hands shaking as she held them against her stomach. She wasn't even showing much yet, just the faintest swell of her twins. Even that made the situation harder. She didn't want to be here. She didn't want to terminate the pregnancy. But after everything that had happened, after losing the custody ruling before her children were even born, every path forward felt dark and narrow, like she was walking down a corridor where every door had already been slammed shut. Her mind kept dragging her back into the courtroom the day before. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the stale smell of paper and old carpet, and Judge Briggs sitting rigid behind the bench, barely glancing at her before turning his attention to Evan's attorney, who spoke with an ease that made the imbalance obvious. The attorney's tone had been smooth, confident, almost mocking as he outlined why Evan should be granted full custody once the children arrived. Her lawyer at the time, a timid man who'd been recommended as affordable rather than competent, seemed to fold in on himself. He avoided eye contact, shuffled papers, responded with weak objections that Judge Briggs dismissed almost immediately. Hannah remembered watching him sink further into his chair, as if he were afraid of drawing too much attention. She remembered thinking, he's scared of them, scared of the judge, scared of Evan's money. And then the ruling came down with an efficiency that made it feel rehearsed. Evan would receive primary custody upon the children's birth. Hannah's protests, her attempts to explain the emotional manipulation and volatile behavior she'd endured, were brushed aside like irrelevant noise. Judge Briggs barely acknowledged her, and the decision was made so quickly she almost wondered if she'd imagined the whole thing. Now, standing outside the clinic, that same helpless pressure pushed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Terminating the pregnancy felt like the one thing she had control over, but the thought of it twisted painfully inside her. She didn't want to do this. She just didn't see another way. She took a slow step toward the clinic door, and then a voice, raspy low, cutting through the rain, called out to her, "Don't go in there, honey." Hannah froze. She turned slightly and saw an elderly homeless woman seated on the concrete ledge near the entrance. Her clothes were layered and worn, her hair gray and tangled beneath a hood, her hands wrapped around a paper cup that had long since cooled. Her eyes were sharp, startlingly alert despite the exhaustion etched into her face. The woman nodded once, as if she already knew Hannah's question before she asked it. "The judge wasn't fair to you," she murmured, voice eerie in its certainty. "Someone paid him. You know that." A shiver ran through Hannah, not from the cold, but from the accuracy of the words. She hadn't told anyone about her suspicions, not even aloud to herself, but something deep inside her had whispered it during the hearing, during the sleepless night afterward. Now this stranger had said it out loud. Hannah took a step closer, heart pounding. "What did you say?" But when she looked again, the woman was already rising, moving away with surprising swiftness for someone her age. By the time Hannah reached the edge of the sidewalk, the woman had disappeared behind the cluster of parked cars and the drifting rain. Hannah stood still for a long moment, rain tapping softly against her coat, her breath clouding in the cold air. Her fear didn't vanish, but something else, small, fragile, stubborn, pushed up through it, a spark of defiance. She backed away from the clinic door, and for the first time in days, she turned in a different direction, not knowing exactly where she was going, but certain she couldn't continue down the path she'd been pushed into. The rain followed Hannah all the way home, trailing behind her like a second shadow. By the time she reached her apartment in southeast Portland, a narrow, aging building tucked between a laundromat and a corner market, her clothes were damp and her thoughts were drifting in and out of focus. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, until she finally closed the door behind her and stood in the quiet of her small living room. Everything looked the same as when she'd left that morning. The half-folded laundry on the chair, the empty mug on the counter, the muted glow of the cloudy light filtering through thin curtains. But something inside her had shifted. The encounter outside the clinic had unsettled her, cracked open a feeling she had pushed down for months, maybe even years. She sank onto the edge of the couch and pressed her palms against her knees. Her breath came unevenly. The twins kicked lightly beneath her hands, reminding her she wasn't alone, not really. And the thought of them, small and growing and vulnerable, was what pushed her to reach for her phone. Her hands hesitated for a moment before she scrolled through her contacts. She moved past recent calls, her old lawyer, Evan, the clinic number she hadn't answered, and then she found it, Monica Fields. They hadn't spoken properly since college. Life had gone in different directions, Hannah into childcare and part-time teaching, Monica into criminal investigations. They'd kept loose tabs on each other through social media. The occasional holiday message, but nothing deep. Still, Hannah remembered Monica as someone who saw through facades, who didn't get intimidated easily. She pressed call. It rang once, twice, then a familiar but older voice answered. Hannah? Hey, everything okay? The question was simple, innocent even, but it nearly broke her. No, Hannah whispered. Do you have time to talk? Monica didn't hesitate. Where are you? Home. Give me 30 minutes. Meet me at Laurel and Pine, near Burnside. It's quiet this time of day. Hannah exhaled shakily. Okay. Hang in there, Monica said softly before hanging up. The cafe sat on a corner where old brick buildings met newer glass storefronts. Inside, it smelled of coffee beans and rain-soaked jackets. Hannah found a table in the back, tightening her coat around her as she waited. Her nerves buzzed beneath her skin. A few minutes later, Monica stepped inside, brushing water from her hair. She looked almost exactly as Hannah remembered. Focused brown eyes, a firm posture that suggested she saw more than she ever said out loud. Hannah, she murmured, pulling her into a brief, steadying hug before sitting down. The moment their drinks arrived, hers decaf, Monica's black, Hannah began to talk. Slowly at first, then all at once. She told Monica everything. The emotional pressure Evan had put on her. The threats he made whenever she pushed back. The way he dismissed her concerns. The way he hid finances from her. The way he treated the pregnancy like a bargaining chip. She described the custody hearing, the arrogance of Evan's attorney, the strange tension in the room, the obvious imbalance of power, and finally, voice trembling, she spoke about the elderly woman outside the clinic, the warning that Judge Briggs wasn't fair, that someone paid him. Monica didn't interrupt. She didn't dismiss or minimize. She listened with a seriousness that made Hannah feel, for the first time in months, that she wasn't imagining everything. When Hannah finished, Monica sat back, tapping one finger lightly against her cup. I'm going to tell you something, Monica said carefully. Judge Leonard Briggs, he's had complaints before. Hannah's breath caught. Complaints. Nothing proven, Monica clarified, but there's been smoke. Enough that some of us have wondered what's really going on behind the scenes. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. "Your attorney should have pushed harder," Monica added. "But he won't. He's scared. And honestly, you need someone who isn't." Hannah's eyes stung. "I don't know who that would be." "I can give you a few names," Monica said. "People who aren't afraid to challenge the system when it matters. But listen, I can't officially investigate a judge without cause. What I can do is look around." Quietly, Hannah swallowed, the first hint of solid ground returning beneath her feet. "You'd do that?" "For you? Of course," Monica said, her expression firm and kind at the same time. "You're not crazy, Hannah. Something's off about this. And you shouldn't have to face it alone." Those words settled into her like warmth after a long winter. When they finally stood to leave, the rain outside had lightened, and for the first time in weeks, Hannah felt something close to hope, fragile but real, taking shape inside her. The next afternoon, the clouds over Portland thickened into a muted gray ceiling, the kind that made the whole city feel quieter than usual. Hannah walked along Southwest 10th Avenue, her steps slow but determined, scanning the storefronts until she found the one she'd been told to look for. A small, neatly maintained law office with a brass plaque that read, "Claire Donovan, Family Law." It didn't look like much from the outside. No marble columns, no glass lobby, no receptionist desk staffed by 3 assistants. None of the intimidating displays she'd seen in Evan's attorney's building. Instead, it was modest, warm-lit, and surprisingly calm. But something about it felt solid, grounded, steady in a way she desperately needed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and paper. A single assistant greeted her, then guided her into a private office where Claire Donovan stood from behind her desk. Claire was in her late 30s, composed, with an unmistakable sharpness in her eyes. She shook Hannah's hand firmly. "Take a seat, Hannah. Monica told me just enough to know we should talk." Hannah sat, smoothing her hands over her knees, nerves fluttering in her stomach. When Claire settled back into her chair, she leaned forward slightly, attentive, focused. So Claire said, "Start from the beginning." And Hannah did. She told her everything she'd told Monica. The emotional pressure, Evan's manipulation, the coercive control, the custody ruling that felt pre-decided, the judge's dismissive attitude, the fear that she hadn't been heard, that the system had been stacked against her. And then she told Claire about the elderly woman outside the clinic, the warning that had shaken her to her core. Claire didn't interrupt. She asked sharp, precise questions when needed about dates, tone, specific comments made by Judge Briggs, patterns in Evan's behavior, financial inconsistencies Hannah remembered, and the moments that made her suspect the ruling wasn't legitimate. When Hannah finally stopped talking, Claire sat back, tapping her pen lightly against her notepad. "Well," Claire said calmly, "you're not imagining it." Hannah blinked. "I'm not." "No. Judicial bias is hard to prove, but the patterns you're describing," Claire exhaled through her nose, eyes narrowing, "they're too consistent to ignore." A faint tremor of relief ran through Hannah. Claire opened a folder, pulling out a printed form and a few documents. "Here's what we're going to do. This won't be easy, but it's not impossible." Hannah leaned in, holding on to her every word. "First," Claire said, "we file an appeal. That stops everything from moving forward exactly the way Evan wants. It buys us time." "Okay," Hannah whispered. "Second, we request a judicial review. That's not a small step. It forces the system to look at Judge Briggs' record. And if there are complaints or inconsistencies, they'll have to acknowledge them." "Monica mentioned there were past complaints," Hannah added quietly. Claire nodded. "That's exactly why this might work." She flipped to another page. "Third, we push for financial disclosure from Evan. Full records, bank transfers, investment accounts, anything that can hint at improper influence." Hannah swallowed, thinking of Evan's sudden purchases, the new car, the expensive watch. things he once brushed off as business perks. And finally, Claire said, we reopen the custody evaluation. A proper evaluation. No surcuts. This time, your medical records, the stress you've been under, and Evan's behavior will all matter. It was a lot, overwhelming, but for once, it felt like a direction, an actual plan instead of a desperate wish. Evan won't surrender easily, Claire added, her voice firm, especially if he senses the judge might be compromised. He's going to push back. Hard. Hannah felt her heartbeat quicken. I know, but you're not doing this alone anymore, Claire assured her. We'll go step by step, and if he becomes hostile emotionally or legally, it will help the case. The assistant returned with a contract, and Claire slid it across the desk. This is the retainer agreement. Review it. Ask me anything. If you're ready, we sign and start today. Hannah read through the document, absorbing each line carefully. The words blurred once from emotion, but she steadied her breath and refocused. When she reached the signature line, her hands trembled, but not from fear this time, from resolve. She signed. Not 20 minutes later, as Hannah stepped out into the damp Portland air, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated before answering. Evan's voice hit her immediately, sarcastic and cold. So you're really trying to fight this, he scoffed. You think hiring some bargain lawyer is going to change the outcome? You can't stop what's coming. You never could. Hannah froze on the sidewalk, her breath catching. She didn't respond, just listened until he hung up. When she returned inside to tell Claire what happened, Claire didn't look surprised. Good, Claire said simply. Keep the voicemail. That tone, that arrogance. She tapped the desk. It's going to work in our favor. Something in Hannah steadied. The battle had begun. The next few days slipped by in a blur of nervous waiting. Portland's winter rain barely let up, tapping steadily against the windows of Hannah's apartment as she tried to sleep, tried to eat, tried to keep her mind steady for the sake of the twins. But every hour felt stretched tight, as though something unseen was moving beneath the surface of her life, shifting pieces she couldn't fully grasp. On a gray afternoon, her phone buzzed. The name on the screen made her sit upright. Monica Fields. Hannah answered immediately. Monica. I've got something, Monica said quietly. Her voice carried a weight that made Hannah's pulse jump. Can you talk? Hannah nodded, even though Monica couldn't see her. Yes, I'm home. Good. Listen, these aren't official findings, so don't repeat them. But I did some digging. There was a pause, filled only by the faint hum of static. Judge Briggs has a pattern. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to raise eyebrows. Rulings that don't match the evidence. Custody decisions that lean suspiciously towards certain attorneys. And a lifestyle that doesn't quite match a judge's salary. Hannah closed her eyes. What do you mean? High-value purchases, cash-based transactions, a couple of real estate investments, one of them tied indirectly to a developer Evan's firm collaborates with. Nothing provable yet, but definitely not clean. The words hit Hannah like a cold wind. She pressed a hand to her stomach, steadying herself as the twins shifted inside her. I'll send Claire the outline, Monica said. Just enough to give her direction. She'll know how to use it. Thank you, Hannah whispered. I don't know how to. Don't thank me yet, Monica cut in gently. This is just the beginning. And Hannah, be careful. Evan won't like that you're pushing back. The call ended, leaving Hannah alone in the quiet apartment, her thoughts racing. When she arrived at Claire's office the next day, Claire was already reviewing Monica's message on her laptop. Her expression was sharp, energized. This, Claire said, tapping the screen, is exactly the leverage we needed. You can use it. Hannah asked, hope and fear tangled inside her voice. I can incorporate it, Claire corrected. We don't present it as proof. We present it as reason to question the judge's impartiality. reason to demand transparency, reason to reopen your case. It's a wedge, and we're going to use it." She immediately added the findings to the motions she'd been drafting: a request for judicial review, a motion for reconsideration, a preliminary petition for emergency custody assessment. Each document carried the quiet force of someone who knew exactly where to apply pressure. But as Claire pushed forward, Evan pushed back. It started with unexpected visits, knocks on Hannah's door late at night, loud enough to make her flinch. She refused to open, but his voice seeped through the wood. "You're ruining everything, Hannah. You don't know what you're doing." Other times, it came in the form of voicemails, sharp mocking, dripping with control. "You're unstable. You can barely keep yourself together. Do you really think a judge will hand you kids in that condition?" And then the message that made her hands shake: "I'll tell the court you're mentally unfit. I'll make them listen." Stress twisted through her like a tightening wire, and her body reacted before her mind did. Sharp cramps, deep aches, sudden waves of pressure that sent her doubling over. Twice she ended up calling the nurse hotline, breathless with panic. When the pains became strong enough to make her lean against the counter for support, she went to Legacy Good Samaritan Medical Center. After monitoring her for several hours, a nurse returned with a stern expression. "You need to rest," the nurse said, her voice gentle but serious. "Your stress levels are too high. You're at risk for preterm complications. No heavy lifting. Minimize conflict. Call us if the pain increases." Hannah nodded, but her throat tightened. How was she supposed to minimize conflict when Evan was practically building it around her? Back at Claire's office 2 days later, she relayed everything. The visits, the threats, the hospital warning. Claire listened without blinking. When Hannah finished, Claire folded her hands on the desk. "This is exactly why we press forward," she said. "Evan's behavior is escalating. Judges don't look kindly on intimidation tactics, especially during a high-risk pregnancy. Document everything. Every voicemail, every message, every incident. It will help us." Hannah exhaled shakily. "And the hearing?" Claire's expression hardened. "Judge Briggs will fight back. He's not the type to step aside politely, but he's slipping, and he knows it." She slid the stack of motions across her desk with quiet resolve. "We're ready for him." For the first time, Hannah believed her. The courthouse on SW 4th Avenue looked even more imposing than usual that morning. Clouds hung low over Portland, casting the building in a dim, heavy light that matched the tension building in Hannah's chest. She walked beside Claire Donovan through the security checkpoint, clutching her coat tighter around herself. Her twins shifted slightly inside her, a reminder that every step she took now had weight, consequence, and urgency. Claire moved with calm precision, her expression unreadable but confident. She carried a slim case file tucked under her arm. One Hannah knew contained the motion that would ignite the confrontation they'd been building toward. Inside the courtroom, Evan sat at the respondent's table, perfectly groomed, leaning back with the smug composure of someone who believed he owned every inch of the room. His attorney, Martin Keegan, whispered something to him that made Evan smirk. Judge Leonard Briggs entered moments later. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and scanned the courtroom, lingering just a hair too long on Claire, as though already anticipating trouble. Claire rose immediately. "Your Honor, before we proceed with any further custody matters, I'm filing a formal motion requesting your recusal due to conflict of interest." The words dropped into the room like a stone. Evan sat upright. His attorney stiffened. Judge Briggs blinked once, then leaned forward sharply. "Ms. Donovan," he said, voice coated with icy irritation, "this court has no reason to entertain baseless accusations. You are out of line." Claire's expression didn't change. "With respect, Your Honor." The motion is supported by documented irregularities in prior rulings, financial inconsistencies, and undisclosed associations relevant to this case. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Briggs' jaw tightened. Keegan stood abruptly. "Your Honor, we object to this circus. Ms. Whitmore is fabricating conspiracy theories to delay the inevitable. There is no evidence, none, that suggests impropriety." Claire didn't even look at him. The records speak for themselves, and until they are reviewed by an independent judge, proceeding with this custody matter would violate my client's constitutional right to an impartial hearing. Hannah watched the exchange from her seat, her heart pounding. She'd never seen anyone stand up to Judge Briggs like this. Her old attorney practically bowed every time he spoke. Claire, however, held her ground with the quiet force of someone who refused to be intimidated. Briggs straightened in his chair, gripping the wooden armrests. "Ms. Donovan," he said slowly, "if you think you can march into my courtroom and impugn my reputation with speculative nonsense—" Claire finally met his gaze without flinching. "If there is no conflict of interest, Your Honor, then transparency should present no threat to the court." Another stunned silence fell. Briggs' face reddened, the stern lines around his mouth sharpening. "You are dangerously close to contempt." Claire's voice remained steady. "And you are still required to respond to a lawful motion. The family court's procedures do not grant immunity from review." Even Evan looked rattled now, his confident smirk slipping as he glanced uneasily at the judge. Keegan tried again. "Your Honor, we request that this motion be dismissed immediately. These accusations are defamatory and unsupported by any credible." Claire cut in cleanly. "The motion includes supporting documentation, purchase records, land acquisition filings, calendar inconsistencies, all available for review." Briggs' eyelids twitched. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was the first crack Hannah had seen in his carefully maintained composure. He cleared his throat. "The court will take the motion under advisement." Claire nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor." But everyone in the room knew what had just happened. Briggs hadn't dismissed it. He hadn't crushed her. He hadn't even threatened sanctions beyond the initial flare of anger. His reaction wasn't the response of a man confident in his innocence. It was the reaction of a man cornered. The rest of the hearing dissolved into procedural noise. Dates, filings, obligations, but the tension hung heavy, like smoke that refused to dissipate. When Briggs finally adjourned, his gavel struck harder than necessary, a sharp crack that echoed through the room. Hannah followed Claire into the hallway, her legs unsteady but her breath lighter than it had been in weeks. Claire paused near the elevator, crossed her arms, and allowed herself the faintest shadow of a smile. "This," she said quietly, "was the crack we needed." Hannah exhaled a deep, shaky breath that felt like the first real inhale of hope. The days following the confrontation in court felt strangely suspended, like Portland itself was holding its breath. Rain drifted in steady lines outside Hannah's apartment. Fog clung to the streets, and every hour seemed to vibrate with unanswered questions. The crack Claire had created in Judge Briggs' facade had shifted something. Hannah could feel it, but cracks also meant danger. And danger had a way of moving quickly. Late one afternoon, Hannah received a call from Monica, asking her to meet at Claire's office. Her voice carried an undertone that made Hannah's pulse skip. "Someone's joining us," Monica added quietly. "Someone who can help." When Hannah arrived, Claire and Monica were already standing with another woman, a tall, composed figure in a charcoal blazer, her badge clipped discreetly to her belt. Her expression was calm but alert, the kind of presence honed by years of walking into complicated rooms and making sense of them. "This is Sergeant Emily Harper," Monica said. "Oregon State Police, Financial Crimes Division." Emily extended a hand. "Ms. Whitmore, I'm here unofficially. That means I can listen and I can guide." But I can't open a case unless it meets certain thresholds. Understood? Hannah nodded, her throat tight. Yes. They gathered around Claire's conference table, the blinds drawn for privacy. Emily set a thin folder down. Nothing bulky or dramatic, but the sight of it made Hannah's breath pause. We've been monitoring several financial movements over the past few months, Emily began, her tone precise and measured. Some of them overlap with Judge Briggs' known accounts. Others tie in directly to a shell company connected to Whitmore Development. Hannah's stomach sank. Connected how? Emily flipped open the folder, sliding forward a few printed sheets. This LLC, Pine Ridge Consulting, was registered 18 months ago. No employees, no office listed. No activity besides receiving large cash transfers and issuing smaller payments to individuals who also happen to appear in your husband's professional orbit. Claire leaned in, her eyes sharp. And the judge? There are patterns, Emily said carefully. Cash deposits into an account that belongs to a relative of his. Transfers happening shortly after specific rulings that benefited certain developers. Her gaze settled meaningfully on Hannah. One of those developers is Evan Whitmore. The room went quiet. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was movement, dangerous, undeniable movement, toward what Hannah had feared all along. Claire's voice broke the silence. If these patterns hold, it becomes more than a custody issue. It becomes judicial corruption. Emily nodded, which is why this must stay quiet for now. No documents leave this room. No mention to anyone outside this circle. If your husband catches wind of it before we're ready, he'll bury everything. Hannah felt a cold rush move down her arms. He's already unpredictable. Monica exchanged a look with Emily. That's another thing we need to discuss. Emily clasped her hands. Ms. Whitmore, based on what Monica has reported and the escalation in your husband's behavior, showing up uninvited, threatening messages, you need to take precautions. Do not meet him alone. Not in parking lots, not in hallways, not even at your front door. Claire added softly, record everything. Save every voicemail. Forward copies to me and Monica. Hannah nodded, her fingers trembling slightly against the table's edge. I will. They spent another hour reviewing timelines, identifying risk points and planning next steps. When Hannah finally left Claire's office, the sky was dark and the downtown streets were gleaming from rain. She walked carefully to her car, scanning the streetlights, aware of every sound behind her. Because Emily was right, Evan wasn't reacting like a man losing control of his marriage. He was reacting like a man losing control of a scheme. That night, the pressure of it all settled into Hannah's body like a weight. She tried to sleep, shifting carefully on her side, one hand resting over her stomach. But stress had dug its claws too deep. Every message from Evan, every unexpected knock, every shadow that passed the window replayed in her mind. Around 2 a.m, she jolted awake with a sharp, pulling pain across her abdomen. It wasn't the mild tightening she'd felt before. This was deeper, hotter, like something twisting from the inside. She gasped, gripping the sheets. The pain radiated down her spine, into her hips. She tried to breathe evenly, but each inhale trembled. After several minutes, it eased, leaving a dull ache behind. Hannah lay still in the darkness, palms pressed against her stomach, tears sliding silently into her hair. Something was wrong. Maybe not catastrophic yet, but wrong enough to feel like a warning. A warning of what was coming. The rain had eased by morning, but the air in Portland felt unusually heavy, thick, unmoving, as though the whole city sensed something shifting beneath its paved surface. Hannah was getting ready to leave for Claire's office when her phone buzzed with an unexpected alert. A court notification. Emergency hearing scheduled, same day. Judge Briggs presiding. Her breath caught. "He's trying to trap us," she whispered. Claire confirmed it within minutes. "He's pushing this through before the judicial review can move forward. He wants to strike first." Hannah's pulse thudded. Stress had already woven itself into her body like a second heartbeat, and the sudden pressure made her stomach tighten. Still, she grabbed her coat, determined to get to the courthouse. But the twins had other plans. Halfway down her apartment stairwell, a bolt of pain shot across her abdomen, so sharply she cried out, gripping the railing with both hands. It wasn't the dull ache she'd been feeling for days. It was white-hot and immediate, dropping her to her knees before she even processed what was happening. Her vision blurred. Another wave hit, stronger, forcing air out of her lungs. A neighbor saw her collapse and ran to call 911. Within minutes, paramedics were guiding her onto a stretcher as she tried to breathe through the tightening, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Hannah, stay with us," one of them said gently. "Legacy Good Samaritan is 10 minutes away." She nodded, tears sliding down her temples as the ambulance doors shut. Claire arrived at the courthouse alone. The hallways buzzed with a nervous energy she immediately recognized. Something was already happening behind the scenes. When she entered the courtroom, Judge Briggs looked stiff, tense, almost unsettled. Keegan whispered urgently in his ear, and Briggs brushed him off with a visible flicker of irritation. Claire rose before the judge could speak. "Your Honor, my client is unable to attend. She has been transported to Legacy Good Samaritan Medical Center with a medical emergency." Briggs opened his mouth to object, but before he could, the courtroom doors opened and a clerk hurried inside, whispering something into his ear. His expression shifted. First confusion, then disbelief, then a rigid, brittle fury. "We're taking a recess," he snapped abruptly. Claire's eyes narrowed. Something has happened. Keegan looked pale. Evan, sitting behind him, demanded an explanation, but none came. The judge stormed into his chambers, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. 10 minutes later, the clerk returned. "Judge Briggs has been suspended pending investigation," she announced quietly, effective immediately. "Another judge will be assigned." Claire blinked, just once, then gathered her files with controlled precision. She didn't smile. She didn't react. She simply walked out of the courtroom, phone already in hand. She called Hannah the moment she reached the elevator. Hannah lay in a triage room, hooked to fetal monitors, trying desperately to stay calm as nurses checked her vitals. She had finally caught her breath when her phone buzzed on the bedside tray. Claire's name, with shaking hands. She answered. "Hannah," Claire said, her voice low but steady. "Briggs is gone." Hannah blinked, the words not fully registering. "Gone. Suspended. An official investigation has been opened into financial misconduct. Everything Emily and Monica suspected, it's coming to the surface. They pulled him mid-hearing. He's out." Hannah covered her mouth with her hand. The tears came instantaneously, hot, overwhelming, breaking through every fragile boundary she tried to hold in place. Relief, shock, exhaustion, fear. They all surged at once, leaving her breathless. Claire continued, softer now. "This is the breakthrough we've been fighting for. Everything he ruled is now under review. Your case is wide open." Hannah let her head fall back against the pillow, sobbing silently. Nurses glanced over with sympathetic eyes, mistaking her emotion for fear, but it wasn't fear. Not anymore. It was release, the kind that comes only after weeks of holding everything together with shaking hands. Minutes later, Claire arrived at the hospital, stepping into the triage area with her usual composed stride. She sat beside Hannah's bed, placed a steady hand on her arm, and spoke with quiet certainty. "You survived his corruption, and now the truth is finally in motion." Hannah closed her eyes, tears still slipping down her cheeks, and whispered, "Thank you." But Claire shook her head gently. "This wasn't luck, Hannah. You fought, even when you thought you couldn't." For the first time in weeks, Hannah believed her. By the following morning, Portland was washed in cold winter light, pale and unfriendly against the hospital windows. Hannah had barely slept. The contractions had eased after medication, but the pressure remained, an unstable rhythm under her ribs, unpredictable and sharp. Nurses checked on her repeatedly, murmuring reassurance, adjusting monitors, watching the fetal heart tracings with focused eyes. But stress had carved deep lines inside her body, and it was only a matter of time. Just after sunrise, another contraction tore through her, stronger than anything before. Hannah gasped, gripping the bed rails. A nurse rushed over. "Hannah, talk to me. How bad is it?" Hannah's voice trembled. "It's different. Something's wrong." Within minutes, her room was filled with movement, nurses, a resident. A rapid assessment. The fetal monitor began to spike in sharp patterns she didn't understand but could feel in her bones. "We need to move her," the resident said. "This could be early labor. Let's get her to labor and delivery." The words hung heavy in the air. Early. Too early. Hannah's panic rose, twisting with the physical pain as they wheeled her toward the elevator. Every contraction brought a wave of fear that blurred the hallway lights. Her hands shook violently. The twins weren't ready. She wasn't ready, but her body gave her no choice. Labor progressed at a speed no one expected. Nurses moved with swift efficiency, calling out measurements, paging attending physicians, preparing equipment. Hannah clung to the sound of their voices, steady, practiced, calm even when the situation wasn't. "Breathe, Hannah. Stay with us." She tried. The pain intensified, radiating from her back to her hips, deep and consuming. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't know if she was crying from fear, exhaustion, or the overwhelming terror of losing everything she'd fought for. Within hours, her body pushed past the point of slowing down. "She's crowning. Let's go. She can do this." The delivery was raw and brutal, nothing like the gentle images she once imagined. It was sweat and shaking, pressure and panic, the sensation of her own strength unraveling while something primal forced her forward. And then a cry, small, thin, but unmistakably alive. Her first daughter. Minutes later, another cry, slightly stronger, her second daughter. Hannah broke completely, sobbing with relief as the doctors worked quickly to stabilize the newborns. Their fragile bodies were whisked toward the NICU, surrounded by nurses who moved with practiced urgency. "She they're okay?" Hannah whispered. "They're fighters," a nurse said gently. "Tiny but strong." Hours later, Hannah was resting in a dim recovery room when the door opened. Evan stepped inside. His expression was molded into concern, practiced concern, the kind that hovered somewhere between performance and calculation. He stood near the foot of her bed, hands clasped like he'd rehearsed the pose. "Hannah," he said softly, "I came as soon as I heard. Are you all right?" She stared at him, too tired to mask the instinctive recoil his presence triggered. "You shouldn't be here," she said weakly. He ignored that. Look, everything's been twisted lately, but we don't have to keep fighting. You've been under so much stress. Maybe we can work something out. Something peaceful." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We can settle outside of court. No more hearings. No investigators. No embarrassments." There it was, the real motive. Fear, thinly veiled beneath his feigned compassion. He wasn't here because of the babies. He was here because Briggs' suspension meant the entire chain of corruption could unravel. Claire entered just then. Having spoken with the NICU team, she immediately picked up on the tension. "Mr. Whitmore," she said coolly, "this is a medical recovery room, not a negotiation session." Evan straightened. I'm just trying to make peace. No, Claire replied sharply. You're trying to protect yourself, and you're doing a poor job of it. The mask slipped. Evan's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing before shifting back into a counterfeit smile. Hannah, he said again, just think about it. I'm giving you a chance to avoid another fight. Hannah's voice was almost a whisper, but unmistakably firm. No, he blinked. No. No back doors. No deals. Not after everything you've done. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue. But Claire stepped forward, positioning herself between them. That's enough. You need to leave. Now. Evan hesitated, then turned sharply and walked out. The room felt lighter the moment the door shut behind him. Later, Claire accompanied Hannah to the NICU. The sound of soft monitors, quiet beeping, and hushed nurse conversations created an atmosphere of fragile stillness. Tiny incubators glowed under gentle lights, each holding a life barely beginning. Hannah approached her daughters, so small, so impossibly delicate. Each movement of their tiny chests tightened something inside her. They're beautiful, Claire whispered. Hannah pressed a trembling hand to the incubator's edge. I'm going to protect them, she murmured, no matter what. In that moment, tired, aching, emotionally stripped, Hannah felt something stronger than fear rising in her. Not defiance, not anger, something deeper, a mother's will, and it was unshakable. 2 weeks after the twins' birth, on a crisp, cloudless morning, Hannah was wheeled into the Multnomah County Courthouse. This time as a mother, flanked by strength she hadn't possessed before. Claire walked beside her, carrying a meticulously organized case file, the edges marked with tabs and color codes. Hannah still moved carefully, her body healing from the premature delivery. But something about her posture had changed. She no longer looked like someone crushed by circumstance. She looked like someone who had survived it. The courtroom itself felt different. Judge Briggs was gone, his name scrubbed from the schedule. In his place sat Judge Miriam Caldwell, a woman known across Portland's legal community for her composure, fairness, and unwavering adherence to process. Her presence was steady, almost comforting, her eyes clear and observant as she surveyed the room. Good morning, Judge Caldwell said, her tone firm yet neutral. We are reopening this custody case due to significant procedural concerns and newly presented evidence. For the first time since this nightmare began, Hannah felt a courtroom that wasn't tilted against her. Claire rose. Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate a clear pattern of psychological abuse, manipulation, and coercive control perpetrated by Mr. Whitmore against my client. We will also present evidence of undisclosed financial connections between Mr. Whitmore's company and entities tied to former Judge Leonard Briggs. A hush rippled through the spectators. Evan shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. His usually immaculate composure had cracked since Briggs' suspension. Now he looked tense, cornered, like someone who had lost control of a story he once authored. Claire began with the psychological abuse. She submitted voice recordings Evan had left on Hannah's phone, belittling statements, veiled threats, dismissive comments about her mental stability. Hannah listened from her wheelchair, her chest tightening as each recording played aloud, filling the courtroom with the sound of a man who had once vowed to love her. Then came witness testimony, neighbors, friends, even a nurse from Legacy Good Samaritan who overheard Evan's aggressive tone during one of his hospital visits. All described patterns of pressure, intimidation, and volatile behavior. Keegan, Evan's attorney, objected repeatedly, but his objections were thin, almost desperate. Every one of them forced Judge Caldwell to glance at him with growing impatience. Next came the evidence no one in the room could ignore. Financial documents, summarized cleanly by Claire, unexplained cash movements, suspicious real estate kickbacks, a Shell LLC, Pine Ridge Consulting, linked to Whitmore Development through mirrored deposit patterns, and the critical overlap, transactions aligning with rulings signed by Judge Briggs. Keegan stammered, "Your Honor, this is circumstantial. It is relevant," Judge Caldwell said sharply, "and it will be heard." For the first time, Evan looked directly at Hannah, not with anger, but with something like disbelief, as though he still couldn't understand how everything he'd built, every manipulation carefully threaded over months, had unraveled in front of him. Claire continued. She introduced Hannah's medical records, documented cramps, stress-induced complications, hospital admissions. She spoke of the premature labor, the emergency triage, the twin girls who entered the world weeks too early because their mother had been pushed past the limits of emotional and physical safety. "This isn't merely a custody issue," Claire said, her voice steady but heavy with conviction. "It is a case of endangerment through sustained emotional abuse." Judge Caldwell leaned back in her chair, hands folded thoughtfully. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, turning toward Evan, "do you wish to respond?" Evan stood. His suit was flawless, but his hands betrayed him, shaking slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. "All of this," he said, voice strained, "is being exaggerated. Hannah has always been unstable. Claire didn't even rise. Your Honor, the recordings speak for themselves." Evan tried again, his voice rising. "She's trying to turn people against me. I'm the one who—" "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore," Judge Caldwell said, no hesitation, no softness. He obeyed. Slowly, the shift was unmistakable. His power, once inflated by arrogance and a corrupt judge, no longer existed here. After reviewing the evidence, after hearing all arguments, after weighing the medical and psychological risks, Judge Caldwell delivered her ruling. In the interest of the children's safety and well-being, this court grants Ms. Hannah Whitmore full physical custody and primary legal custody. Hannah felt the air leave her lungs. Claire placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Judge Caldwell continued, "Mr. Whitmore will receive supervised visitation pending further review. Additionally, the court acknowledges active criminal investigations surrounding the previous presiding judge, Leonard Briggs. Any rulings previously influenced by him are vacated." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Shocked whispers, scattered gasps. Simultaneously, as if timed by fate, phones buzzed across the gallery. A news alert. Claire glanced at her screen. "Briggs is being charged," she whispered. "Financial misconduct. Corruption. 3 felony counts." Evan's face drained of color. His attorney slumped back, defeated. And Hannah, tired, healing, but stronger than ever, felt something shift inside her. Not victory, not revenge. Something quieter, something steadier. Freedom. Evan was no longer the man who controlled everything. He was a man exposed, isolated, and left standing in the wreckage he created. And Hannah, for the first time, could finally breathe. 10 years slipped by like a long exhale, carrying with them the sharp edges of a life once dominated by fear. The winters in Portland still brought cold rain, but in the small neighborhood where Hannah Whitmore now lived, the world felt softer. Her home sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees, their branches spreading like open hands over the sidewalks. Wind chimes hung from her porch, catching the slightest breeze, filling the air with a gentle music that marked the passing of seasons. Inside that home, laughter echoed, bright, steady, unmistakably whole. Her daughters, now 10, raced through the hallway with the unself-conscious joy of children who had never known the battles that secured their childhood. They were identical only in the way their eyes sparkled when they smiled. Everything else, personality, voice, rhythm, was uniquely theirs. They were strong, curious, and fiercely bonded to their mother. Hannah had rebuilt her world slowly, piece by piece. She taught part-time at a community education center in Southeast Portland, offering early childhood literacy classes and sometimes guest teaching art workshops. Her schedule was flexible, gentle, designed around her daughters' lives, not in spite of them. She volunteered at the local food bank twice a month. She helped organize neighborhood drives. She became the kind of person people trusted instinctively, not because she tried to be anything extraordinary, but because she had learned, through fire and loss, how to live with sincerity. Her friendship with Monica deepened over the decade, transforming into something like chosen family. They met for brunch twice a month. Monica still in her sharp detective suits, Hannah in soft sweaters and jeans, and talked about everything from cases to school projects to the new restaurant opening on Division Street. Sometimes Sergeant Emily Harper joined them, offering updates on the lingering remnants of the Briggs scandal whenever the subject resurfaced. Evan remained a distant and largely irrelevant figure. Supervised visitation had continued for the first few years, then lessened as the girls grew older and learned to form their own boundaries. He visited occasionally, never alone, always under watch. His life had contracted into a narrower shape after Briggs' downfall, financially, socially, emotionally. He lived in a modest apartment on the west side of town. His business, significantly smaller than it once was. He had tried for years to regain a foothold in the world he believed he deserved, but something in him had permanently cracked. Influence gone, connections severed. The mask that once charmed judges and colleagues no longer held any weight. For Hannah, he was simply a shadow on the edge of her life, present but powerless. The girls were polite with him, but detached. Children have an uncanny ability to sense when love is thin and forced. They never asked to see him more. They never asked to stay longer, and Hannah never pushed. Her world moved in a different direction. Every now and then, Hannah found herself thinking about the night outside the clinic. Rain falling in silver sheets, her body shaking with grief, her future collapsing in front of her, and the woman, that elderly woman with sharp eyes and a voice that cut straight through the fog of despair. Hannah had never seen her again. No records, no name, no explanation. Just a moment, a single, fragile, improbable moment that became the fulcrum on which her entire life shifted. Over the years, she tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe intuition, maybe something else entirely. But every time she replayed the warning in her mind, every time she considered how impossibly precise the woman's words had been, she felt the same quiet shiver of recognition. Some people arrive for only a sentence in your story, and sometimes that sentence changes everything. One night, near the twins' 10th birthday, Hannah fell asleep on the couch while reading essays her students had turned in. The house was quiet, the wind chimes tapping softly outside. In her sleep, a dream unfolded, strangely vivid, achingly familiar. She stood in a misty field just after dawn, the air cool and pale, and there, in front of her, stood the woman, older still, wrapped in the same worn coat, her eyes bright and knowing. "Did you find your way?" the woman asked. Her voice was gentle, without urgency, without judgment. Just a question, as if she already knew the answer. In the dream, Hannah didn't speak. She only nodded, her throat too full for words. The woman smiled, a small, tender curve of her mouth, and then faded into the morning light as the dream dissolved. Hannah woke slowly, the echo of the woman's voice lingering in the quiet room. She sat up, wrapped her arms around herself, and felt something settle deep inside her. Not sadness, not longing, closure. Outside, the first light of dawn was brushing the sky. The day was new, gentle, unburdened. Hannah stood, walked to her daughter's room, and watched them sleep. Two small bodies curled under warm blankets, breathing softly in the half-dark. Her life was not perfect, but it was hers, whole, peaceful, rebuilt from the fractures of a past that no longer defined her. When she finally whispered, Yes, I found it. She wasn't answering the dream. She was answering her life. And the life ahead